Hello, we are group 14. We will introduce capacitor. Capacitor is an element that stores electric quantity and electric energy. It is a device that holds charge. Capacitor is one of the electrical components widely used in electrical equipment. It is widely used in energy conversion and control in circuits. The basic structure of the capacitor is two electric opposite as intervals, and a dielectric is installed in the middle of the electric plate. The working principle of capacitor is that the charge will move on the force in the electric field, and when there is a medium between the conductors, it hinders the charge movement and makes the charge accumulate on the conductor, resulting in the accumulation and storage of the charge.
Electrolytic capacitor is a polarized capacitor. The positive plate is made of metal that can create an insulating oxide layer by anodization, such as aluminium, tantalum, and niobium. The insulating oxide layer is the dielectric of electrolytic capacitor. The negative plate is made of solid, liquid, or gel electrolytic. Aluminum electrolytic capacitor, tantalum electrolytic capacitor, and niobium electrolytic capacitor are the three types of electrolytic capacitor. The advantage of using electrolytic capacitor is that it has a larger capacitance. Capacitance of the capacitor depends on electrode area, dielectric permittivity, and thickness of dielectric. The dielectric thickness of electrolytic capacitor is thin, and the voltage strength of these oxide layers are high. This combination allows electrolytic capacitor to achieve a higher volumetric capacitance. Also, the electrode area of electrolytic capacitor is small comparing to that of other capacitors with the same volume. This is one reason for the high capacitance values of electrolytic capacitor. There are several disadvantages of using electrolytic capacitor. The first drawback is large leakage currents. In electrolytic capacitor, the positive terminal must always be at a higher voltage than the negative terminal. If the voltage polarity on the terminals is reversed, the oxide layer might get damaged. Short circuit occurs between the two capacitor terminals, and large leakage current can be found. As a result, the capacitor may burst. The second drawback is unstable capacitance, as the tolerance of electrolytic capacitor is about 20%. The application of electrolytic capacitor includes licensing voltage fluctuation in filtering device, smoothing the input and output to a filter, noise filtering in power supplies, connecting signals between amplified stages, storing energy in low power applications, and provide time delays between two functions in a circuit. Electrolytic capacitor is often used in DC power supply circuit. Mica capacitor is a capacitor which uses mica as the dielectric. Mica is one of the natural minerals that is very stable in different aspects. Muscovite and phyllogopite are the two types of mica that have frequently used. Champed mica capacitor and silver mica capacitors are the two types of mica capacitors. Clamped mica capacitor made from the combination of mica sheets and copper flows and clamped. The electrode or plate of silver mica capacitor is made of mica dielectric, which is silvered. There are several advantages of using mica capacitor. The first advantage is the stable capacitance. as the minimum tolerance for silver mica capacitor values is about 1%. The second advantage is high stability as it can operate normally in a wide weather, temperature, and voltage range. The third advantage is low resistive and inductive loss. The fourth advantage is that mica provides good insulation to the capacitor. There are various disadvantages of using mica capacitor. Mica capacitors are expensive and bulky as high cost and large volume is needed for achieving those advantages. Another disadvantage is that it needs proper sealing. Mica capacitor is used in appliances which require low capacitance values, high stability, and low loss capacitor. It is mainly used in power RF circuits. It can be found in RF filters, oscillator, amplifier, and transmitter.
Paper capacitor is a kind of capacitor. It is capacitor with paper as the electric. It is mainly divided into paper capacitor, paper sheet capacitor, and metallized capacitor. The advantage of paper capacitor is that it provides a fixed capacitance value and can directly determine the capacitance value generated in its production process. At present, paper capacitor is used as sensor to measure air humidity, fuel levels, and mechanical stress are also used in a variety of high voltage and high current applications. Film capacitor is a capacitor with plastic film as dielectric. The more common film capacitor is metal film capacitor. Compared with the other capacitor, the film capacitor has the advantage of smaller volume, high stability, and reliability. But its disadvantage is that it may become combustible under overload conditions. Low power film capacitors are used as filters and AD converters, while high power film capacitors are used in power electronic equipment and X-ray flash in recent years.
Non-polarized capacitor with neither positive nor negative polarity. The two electrons of a non-polarized capacitor can be put into the circuit at random and will not leak. Comparing polarized and non-polarized capacitor. A large capacity non-polarized capacitor is difficult to be made since the volume required is enormous. Non-polarized capacitor can be completely replace polarized capacitor as long as the capacity, working voltage, volume, and other specifications are met. Electrolytic capacitors offer a large capacitance. Non-polarized capacitors are recommended for most applications. They are less expensive, may be put in any direction, and have a longer lifespan. A symmetric capacitor is a fixed value capacitor where the symmetric material acts as the dielectric. It is constructed of two or more alternate layers of symmetric and a metal layer acting as the electric. The composition of the symmetric material defines the electrical behavior and therefore applications. Symmetric capacitors, especially multi-layer symmetric capacitor, are the most produced and used capacitor in electronic equipment that incorporated approximately 1 trillion pieces per year. The dish-type motor is the most commonly used symmetric capacitor, which was earlier than electricity. It was used in many Fourier-type equipment. Symmetric capacitors are also widely used in transistors. Nowadays, symmetrical capacitors are still widely used in various electrical devices due to their high capacity and performance advantage compared to other low capacitance capacitors.